Hey Jesse, okay, so here's the karmic reading for you and your gal. And it's really cool because I was getting hits as I'm shuffling. I'm just finding like the more I do this, it's not really, it's like the cards are a tool, but it's all it's all coming through in my head. It's all here. So it's really cool. So I'm going to get to what came through first is down here. So I want to actually start down here and get that out of the way because it was coming through first, and it was like right when you ordered this, it was like that's what came through first, and it is so weird. So bear with me. So what we're doing is we're going to be looking at the relationships. This is all relationships here, and then this is and this is at the very least. So we have 3, but this is the very least. You know what I mean? Like we can do it more and see what happens. I don't know. Maybe there's more. We'll see. But then we have the feelings here, and then we have the lesson from those interactions over here. So let's start with the first one, which came out last. So here, so this is family, okay? So this card is family. What's really interesting is, it's interesting because this is not human. So what came through, and I'm like, oh really, you're gonna do this to me? Okay. What came through with this is we are talking about, it's almost like it feels pre-human or ancient old. It feels like Earth. So what it was is you guys were part of the same cliff side as pieces of rock, and you were leaning on each other. So you were part of the same rock cliffside, and it looks like overlooking an ocean. It feels like it would be somewhere where we would think of as Europe. Almost like what it looks like in my head is if you have seen pictures of Ireland, the cliffs of what I believe it's called like Moher or Moher. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's an Moher thing. Go Google it. It looks like that. I don't know if it is that. That's the image in my head because that's what they know how to use for me for that image. And it's, you guys are part of the same rock formation. So it's so interesting because there's this feeling and this idea and concept of holding each other up, leaning on each other. And I want to go, so we'll work in the, so the family comes in because it's like the same rock family, like the same place, it's just, that's what's coming through for this. So obviously, you know, like family, of course, you know, like you're thinking like, oh, family member. And it's like, well, yeah, it is, but in a different kind of way. You know what I mean? The feeling involved with this is the love. So this is love. And the reason why it's so strong is because this kind of love here as a non-human, it's an unconditional kind of love that only pieces of creation can really, basically utilize, like non-humans. The love of a non-human thing or energy, the love is so perfect, pure, and strong because it is non-human. It doesn't have emotions like humans do. It doesn't get mixed up with anger and angst and this and that. It just goes with the flow, and it comes straight from source. So source is love. So it comes straight from love. So that's why the love, this little light of love card is here, because it doesn't know anything else. All it knows is to be a rock, to be what it is. That it comes purely from source, and that if it's bonded, so the energy of, let's say, the rock molecules over here versus the rock molecules over here, you guys, it's all just leaning on it. Again, it's just like working in tandem, love. Like so there is this idea of moving around each other in a good way, working around each other in a good way. But also I need to also emphasize that what came through was this, what was it? The idea that if you two tend to fit together a certain way. By that I mean, if you're walking, let's just say you're out walking together, or you're sitting there on the couch together, or whatever it is, there's a certain side that one of you naturally leans towards, or like, let's say you're always on the left and she's always on the right, or there's a certain position that you both naturally come together in. So it could be like where you find that in your relationship as you come together and develop, let's say she naturally puts her head on your shoulder in a certain way, or you naturally cup her body in a certain way. And people think, oh, well, that's normal, and that's, you know, every couple has that, and maybe they do, and that's fine. But this kind of, if that is the case, and you have a natural tendency to, again, always be on this side or that side, whatever it is, you are reminiscing on a soul level the sides or the positions of this rock face, this cliff where you both were the rock. So keep that in mind, and that would be a connection, so to speak. And if not, that's fine, but that is where it would come from, that natural positioning. And then here we have the lesson, which is trust. And it's so beautiful because what's coming through is this whole, like, the trust fall. It's like the trust fall. It's like, so these rocks are together, and it's like there is a trusting vibration between all the rocks. And of course, all the rocks around you too, which, by the way, could be good friends. If you two, when you two came together as a couple, and if from that time period you have brought forward certain friends that feel steady, and that, I guess, that feel like rocks to you guys, that hold your relationship together in a way where it's like they're like hardcore, like they understand you guys and they're rooting for you in the sense where they're like, it's hard to explain. It's like, it's just like a support system, a network, a steady support system and network. It doesn't even have to, it could even be family, but once you two came together, the people who are that support system around you could very well be the other molecular structure of rocks that were part of this cliff face as well, is what I'm trying to get at. So keep that in mind. It's very interesting. It's old as time. It's amazing. It feels amazing. So the trust is there in the sense where, again, it's the leaning on each other. It's the working with each other in that sense. It doesn't mean you don't fight. It doesn't mean you don't butt heads sometimes, whatever. Maybe you do. But when you come together and you can lean on each other that way, that is your rock energy coming together and leaning on each other, if that makes sense. It's, it feels, this is the motion they're having me do. This is what it feels like. It's carrying each other, leaning on each other. It's that kind of thing. Yeah, okay. So let's see if there's anything else here. It is pretty simplistic, but that's the thing that came through first. So I don't think there's any more right now to do with this life, but keep making connections where you can as far as the idea of being a rock together, being rocks together. This could also be coming through as a message for you or you, both of you, that you can rely on the relationship to be as steady as a rock. Even again, if it gets rocky, no pun intended, no total pun intended, but if it does get rocky, that's okay, because you can always come back to this foundational leaning, knowing that you guys were the rock together. And sometimes being rocks together, it can get kind of rocky, and that's okay if it does. Maybe not, maybe smooth as heck. But you know, in the future, whatever happens, just come back to the foundation of you're both rocks together and you can lean on each other. Also, what's coming through too is this feeling of don't underestimate each other's strength. So let's say that you happen to know that she might, or no, you happen to feel like she's, sensitive, or for lack of better words, like weak in a certain maybe like mental area strength. Not that doesn't sound right. More like weak in the mentality of, let's say, a softie. Like if there is a dead bird somewhere and it's hard for her to look at it, that kind of weak. You know what I mean? Not weak like intellectually or anything like that. In that sense of, so I'll say soft, like a softie or whatever it is. Don't underestimate, and this can be her for you, but don't underestimate softness. Don't underestimate the strength of the softness. There is strength in a soft being, a soft person, I guess in a sense, compassionate person. So a lot of times we see people who are maybe compassionate or maybe even passive as weak, and that's not the case. So throw out the word weak. It's more about being compassionate, but not starting to see that as a strength. There is a message in this as making sure that you both see each other's what is considered softness as a strength. That's what it is. Making sure you're seeing the strength in certain traits of each other that might generally or immediately, first impression-y, be thought of as not strong, but it is strong. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind and keep making connections where you can here, okay? So then we're going to go to the next life that came up for me, which was, which one? Up here. So then this one came through too, but it came after this one when, once you ordered, it's like just wants to be told. So this one, okay, so the relationship here, this is child, okay? Child. And then the feeling is content. Whoop, whoop, there we go. And then the lesson overall here is going to be compromise, okay? So this is very cool because what came through was with child, it's not your child, her child, whatever. You were children together, and it felt very much like we're looking at siblings, we're looking at brothers, we're looking at the, what's it called? The dynamic of older brother, younger brother, where it's almost like the age difference is important. It's the age difference is at the, it feels like it's like a 4-year difference. So it's close enough that once the younger brother is, let's say, 6 or 7, the other brother who is, 10 or 11, they can get along and do things together and enjoy activities together. But at the same time, the older brother can still help the younger brother, and in the sense of like physically help him like along. And so basically the imagery that they're bringing through are these young boys tramping through the woods together, kind of like playing in the woods, living in a woodsy area, living in near a town. I'm trying to get the years. Something about agriculture in this town. Something about the town. It's a small town. It's back. So it feels like we're looking at something that might be around like in the 19th century. It feels like these are 2 boys. Hold on. Yeah, it's okay. So there's an aspect of playfulness to them, and in the playfulness is also something watchful and caring in the sense of like making sure the other doesn't get hurt. And then so the older one makes sure the other one isn't getting hurt or tripped up, and the younger one is making sure the older one is nearby and like is doing well leading them, like making sure the older brother, like very watchful. There's something about heavy notice, like a reading of these boys read each other very well, but there's something about the younger one being intuitive in the sense of reading the older one to sense if the older one is just putting on a bravado air to make the younger one feel safe or feel okay in case there is something the older one is worried about. Or let's say they're in the woods, and honestly this might have been a memory, is what's coming is getting lost in the woods. So there's something about getting lost in the woods and the older brother trying to keep his cool and not giving away that he's like freaking out, that he's like, I don't know where the hell I am. So in this way, how you might be able to connect is the sense of the idea, and it feels like this would be you being the older brother and hold on. I can have it wrong, but let's just go with you being the older brother, her being the younger sibling. Wait, hold on. Just because I feel like this might, fuck. This is hard. Hold on. Hold on. This is tough. Let me think. Okay, I'm going to say that one of you might have a tendency to put on an air of not being worried when there is a problem, not wanting to worry the other person, and so you might omit some things to the other person, even if you share everything and there's no secrets between you, it might be the kind of thing where one of you is like, I don't want to worry her, or I don't want to take up her time, so I'm not going to bring this up and tell her how I'm feeling, even though I'm very worried, or I'm scared, or I'm nervous, or anxious. That's what it is. So if one of you have anxiety and you know this about each other, but that person with anxiety does not speak up, this is coming through to tell you to speak up, to lean on the other person because you're rocks together, So somebody, whoever has the anxiety, needs to learn to lean on the other person in the way of verbalizing when they feel nervous, scared, anxious, depressed, whatever it might be. If one of you is the one that dips into lower moods or feels, again, depressed or anxious, whatever it might be, that person needs to start to speak up. And it's going to be important, because this is where it's going to really come together and bond you guys even at a deeper level than you already feel. It's the kind of thing where you're like, oh no, we are set, we are good, we are so like on the same level, there's no way we can even love even more deeply. And that's not the case. You will find as you move along that you will love even more deeply. It'll become levels where you'll feel it. You'll be like, oh my God, we just leveled up. We just bonded even more thoroughly than I thought before, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. And again, whoever has this needs to speak up. And then also there might be where if that person is that way, the other one might already intuitively know it, but they're not going to call them out on it. Or maybe they already do. Maybe they're like, hey babe, are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling anxious? Or what's going on? I feel like there's something going on. So it could be that both of you might be very intuitive, but one of you might be more empathic in the sense of picking up the vibe of the anxiety that the other one is trying to hide. But really now in this lifetime, it's time to really just communicate in that way, because this sibling dynamic is not going to allow the deepening of the relationship if it's kept at that. There's, when there's an older sibling, younger sibling, there's always this whole like, I'm the older sibling, I'm taking care of you, so it creates a kind of, not a wall, but you know what I mean, like where there's the dynamic where it creates like the older one needs to deal with their own stuff and help the younger one. Well, in this case, in this current life, it's like drop the sibling thing where it's like, let's take care of each other now. Let's lean on each other. Let's be the rocks again. That kind of thing. So keep that in mind. The compromise comes in too, because again, the older sibling is compromising. That's the lesson, it's compromising, sharing their fears in order to maintain peace of mind for the other person. And that, what I feel is the role between these two, that's the contract they came in with, was one person had to learn to hold back in order for peace of mind to happen for the one they love, the other one that they love, So there's this whole holding back thing. There's this idea of compromising one's comfort, or one's, we'll say, compromising one's mental peace in order to bring peace to the other. Make sure that compromise is learned. It's done. So make sure in this life you are communicating and you're open and sharing what you're feeling, and get rid of any idea or feeling that, oh, if I say this, it's really gonna bother her, it's really gonna throw her off or make her feel sorry for me or blah blah blah. And if that's the case, just prompt your, what you tell her with, or she tells you, whatever it is, whoever is the anxiety one, whatever, prompt it with, hey, I don't want to weigh you down with this, but I do want to mention I'm feeling kind of like anxious or frustrated or scared about this. Let's say it's like business or something. I'm feeling a little anxious about this new thing we're doing in business, and I just want to talk to you about it. It's not something to worry about, but I want to hear what you have to say about it. Like that kind of thing. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind, and yeah, keep making connections where you can when it comes to this life as the sibling thing, because you also might actually feel that sibling vibe where it is comfortable, and where again both of you take on roles that might mirror how it might be for siblings who really love each other, but one might be older, one might be a little younger. So that idea of like, again, like taking care of someone, that kind of thing, but it's time to take care of each other. In that sense. So keep that in mind and keep making connections. But I don't even know if I touched on the content card. Content is there again, getting along, very happy, meant to be siblings, nothing about butting heads up here, okay? Nothing like the rocks butting heads, not like that. This is a different life. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to come to this life right here. So this one's going to be fresh and new. This, I don't think this came through at all. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so here is actually the karmic card. So we're looking at karma happening here, which makes a lot of sense actually already. I feel like what we're about to be getting into is something different than these two, where the relationships here were very succinct and in sync and more peaceable than anything. So I feel like we're jumping a little bit here. So the feeling card to this relationship here is pity. Okay, so there's pity. And then the lesson that's going to be learned from this is simplicity. So let's just see what is going on here. It feels like we are going to a time when there's something about a... Okay. So it feels like the time period is something akin to what we would consider Middle Ages or medieval. Hold on. I do want to mention though real quick, this I just had to mention, it feels like a Midwestern kind of place. It feels like either, it does feel kind of America. It feels like that kind of thing. Like, it feels like, have you ever heard of the American Girl Company? That's what's coming through. There's the American Girl Company. If you've never heard of it, go Google it. The American Girl Company has stories about girls. Now, one of them was named Felicity, and that's what I feel like is coming through is the Felicity era as far as timeline, and also almost like a place. It feels like a Midwestern kind of place. I don't know if, honestly, I forgot what Felicity was as far as where she was, but it's the time period that counts. Or also Kirsten. Look up Felicity, look up Kirsten, see the time periods of them. And I think they're really close to each other, but there was something very rustic is what I'm getting at. It was a time that felt very rustic, okay? So connections also to that could be Midwestern, small Midwestern towns, the feeling of that, and the idea of like a rustic existence, rustic. We're talking about woods, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about... yeah, so if you can vibe with, or you connect with any of that as far as like, just as far as that goes, that would be a connection as well. So there's that. I just need to mention that because so here we're getting into medieval, Middle Ages. We're getting into really okay, so we're getting into where it feels like there's something having to do with working at a larger place, being somewhere that would work at a larger place. So it's almost like let's just go ahead and say it's like a manor, okay, like a manor. Okay, so it's like a manor, and then they're showing me a female that is poor. It's like a chambermaid kind of thing. She's going in and out of the house. So it's like she doesn't live in the house. She's like a peasant or what they call like a serf or something, where they live on the land kind of thing, but she doesn't work the land. She works in the house, which is a higher position, but it's still she's poor, she's humble, she's a servant, chambermaid kind of thing. So we're looking at her, she's, hold on. It's almost like, there's also something about like, it's like a long dress, a long working dress. Oh, hold on, just bear with me. What is going on here? Pity, simplicity, pity and something about, okay. So she works somewhere, and then there is something having to do with an affair. And the affair might be someone where the manor, it's the person of the manor, so it could be the man in charge, or the son that is grown, that the affair happens. Yeah, okay, that's what it feels like now. Okay, so it feels like you're working at this manor. The manor, whoever is the man of the manor, the aristocrat, has a son who's older, but only older in the sense where he's an adult, is what I'm saying. So he's a young man. And then there's a young woman, and we're looking at one. So there's. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually feeling like, okay. So I feel like you are the young woman, the chambermaid person, and the man is. Yeah. And then the man's Ashley. Yeah. And then that's a young man. So there's something about being polished. Something about the underdog. There's something about having heart for things that this person shouldn't have heart for because of his class in society, and yet he struggles with the distinctions of the class. So there's something about these two classes. So there's poor and then there's rich coming together, and there's an attraction there. but there can't ever be something permanent, so there's a dissonance, but they come together for an affair. And it's almost like, I want to say that the chambermaid has a child by him that is unacknowledged, because he wants to maintain his reputation, dignity. Hold on. Okay, so there's that happening. So it's that kind of thing happening where it really sucks. And there's also a compassion. He has compassion for her, and she really likes him. There's this thing, it's just they can't get together because of the class distinction. So in your current life, if that's a touchy thing for either one of you, is the distinction of classes or something about a deep love for the underdog, that is a connection. There's also the idea of wanting to help the poor, the downtrodden, the feeling empathic, feeling the weight of the world in the sense of the people who are neglected. Hold on. Just, these are connections that could be made. And then also the connection, the idea, if one of you or both of you really enjoy the medieval, Middle Age, learning about that kind of history. On the other hand, one of or both of you can actually not like it because of how volatile it was. Hold on. So this also speaks to the idea of enjoying the independence and the freedom that we have in our society now today, as opposed to how it was back then, and taking advantage of that, finding each other again, being able to be together at a time when it can happen versus this time. Also, this would also speak to, I would say, you as the chambermaid, having the child out of, just whatever it is, just having that child, it's not like out of wedlock, it's just having a child that won't ever know its father, kind of thing, or be supported emotionally by the father. You in this life could have either come into this life having chosen an emotionally distant father, as like a residue of this, or chosen a father who's very compassionate and loving towards you to make up for this. Hold on. And then, on the other hand, Ashley could have chosen someone, again, it could be the same with Ashley, choosing parents who were either doting, as they were here, with the money or whatever, like well off in that way, or neglectful, or, neglectful or kind of abandoning in the sense emotionally, or physically, whatever it is, because of how she treated you. So the soul is getting that karma back, right? Which in getting that karma back would also help take care of this karma between you two regarding her neglect of your child and you. So she's almost like putting karma on herself, where it's like it's not about you getting karma repaid by you, but by others to make up for how she treated you. Does that make sense? And and also if you're identifying as opposites, like if you're like, no, I feel like I'm the guy and she's that chambermaid or whatever, just go with what resonates with you. This is just what it's feeling like to me, in order for me to, articulate properly. So this pity card is coming in because this guy is pitying the woman, and then at the same time, this woman is pitying the man for... It's weird because it's like he has money and he has all this stuff, but at the same time, he doesn't have the freedom to be emotionally free in that way of being able to be with her, because he would be with her, but he can't. So there's pity going both ways for very different reasons, which is very interesting, which means it feels like you both could be looking at the same thing and have very different perspectives of it, but the perspectives still match up and kind of coincide, though they might be very different, pertaining to a particular thing that you're witnessing. So if you're witnessing, like, let's say, like, and bear with me, like, this, might not be the case, it's just an example, but, like, let's say, like, there's a divorce, like, your parents are divorcing. Both of you might have very different perspectives and opinions on that divorce, but they match up nevertheless. They go together, even though they're different. They can both be valid. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm saying, is you both might be where you work together very well because you're both seeing very different perspectives of something, the same thing. You're seeing very different perspectives of the same thing, However, both are very valid and they go together. Huh, there we go. Okay, so keep that in mind if that makes sense at all. But you're also playing out this karma in this life, where this life you couldn't be together because of the classes, the difference of classes, which, by the way, in your current life, if you both come from very different kinds of classes, so to speak, beginnings, one comes from a family that's more well off than the other kind of thing, where back in the day, you would never have been together because of that. But today, in this current timeline in history, you can be together despite that. So if that's a case too, that would be a connection as well. And if not, that's fine. We're just looking at two people coming together that could not be together on a permanent basis or in a real way here, but now you can. So you're just finding each other again to live out this that you never got to live out. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Okay. So, and then simplicity, actually, the lesson of simplicity is because it's like love is as simple as you allow it to be. And here it was made so complex because of society. So there's a message in that for you to, again, and I'm sure you already know this. But if anything ever happens, it's almost like a message of, if you guys get in an argument or a fight or whatever, is just where you're not, there's not a lot of compromise, or whatever relationships, it always happens, right? It's like always come back to that simple foundation of love, and remember that it's likely that you may be butting heads because it might have to do with what one or both of you feel is right by society standards, or I should say by the way you were raised. So just make sure you're tapping into your belief systems and recognizing that both of you were raised differently. Even if it was very similar, there are differences in which the ways you were raised. So make sure that you are aware of that if you ever do butt heads, or if you are ever feeling off, that you're like, wait, where is this coming from? Where is this belief that I'm right because of this coming from? Is it coming from how I was raised? Is it coming from what my friends think? Is it coming from, is it coming from outside of myself? Both of you should check in if there's ever an issue with you guys, and then finding where that comes from. It'll just bring you again down to the base of the foundation of the simple foundation of love is where everything is resolved and solved. So don't look outside of your relationship for advice, or unless it's a professional or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'm saying, like your friends are going to be biased, your friends are going to have their own shit they're dealing with. So if there's ever anything, again, I feel like this has to do with the communication. This has to do with making sure you are not letting outside influences come between you. And if it is, just check in and be like, oh yeah, I remember, okay, this is, this anger is coming from my childhood when I was raised to think this. But it's okay, because now it's like she's allowed to feel this way, I'm allowed to feel this way, and that's just how I was raised, but I can change that belief, right? That kind of thing, if that makes sense. So anyway, so these are the 3 instances that have come up for you guys having known each other. Goes way far back, really cool, and have yet to have gotten a non-human connection in a reading like this, so that's really cool too. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it makes sense. I hope you're able to make some connections, that some things resonate and vibe with you guys, and thanks for letting me read you.